They attempted to touch the body and feel for a pulse. And the gal that was doing that, she felt like the body was cold to the touch. So they waited for an ambulance to arrive just only a few minutes later. And they did pronounce the body as dead on arrival. From the time that they declared the body dead and put it in the body bag until later they did get a heartbeat started, it was exactly 47 minutes. I knew for a fact that what I'd been watching was my own death, and it was very scary for me.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Peaceful Presence Podcast. I'm Olivia Figuered, and this podcast is designed to help you reconnect with God and discover the peace, the purpose, and the power that's within you. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Vincent Tolman to my show. Vinney's story is one of the most remarkable near-death experiences I've ever heard, not just because of what he experienced spiritually, but also because of what was happening physically at the same time, which defied all odds. His journey is truly impossible to explain by any natural means, and the profound lessons he brought back are nothing short of life-changing. This is a story unlike any other, and I know it's going to impact you in powerful ways. And as you're listening, if you have any questions or want to know more on something as you listen, please drop a comment. Well, thank you so much, Vinney, for your willingness to be here today and to speak on my platform. I have heard your story, and it is one of the most incredible near-death experience stories that I've heard, not only because of what you went through, but also what was happening on the physical side to things here on earth and what the people witnessed that you were going through. And so I can't wait for you to share your story. I know that the event took place on January 18th, 2003. But maybe we could just start with what was happening in your life before that and what led up to that day that you died.
Well, I was your average, of the day. This is, again, early 2000s. Of the day, I was your average 25-year-old, very much living at the center of my own universe. I was hybriding myself between two industries of vocation. So I had two jobs. I was always building something, doing construction and framing and carpentry. But on the same right, I was always dabbling in TV and film too as a producer. So I was going back and forth between these two worlds, which they don't actually get along very well. They opposite schedules of each other sometimes. But in doing so, I learned that I loved the power of creation, any kind that I could. When I was younger, I loved art, and I was pursuing both these careers. And in the midst of that, I wanted to build my body. I wanted to create this body that I had always desired to have. I was a strong guy. I had played college rugby. I had played high school rugby and some high school football. And so I was fairly successful in my sports, especially in rugby. I was one of the hardest hitters of the team of all time back then. Um, and so I had this persona about me that I thought I was successful. I thought I knew what happiness was. But my happiness was so shallow. It would go from weekend to weekend to weekend, depending on what entertainment or what adventure I was taking on for the weekend. And in the process of building my body, I was trying a lot of different supplements. I found one that allowed you to work out your arms every day, your chest every day, your legs every day. So when you're trying to build your body, the hard part about bodybuilding itself is you can't work out your arms every day. You need to give your arms 2 days off to recover. And then every 3 days you could do, or every 4 days, you could go back to that category of muscle. Well, this particular supplement, it allowed you a 72-hour recovery in about a day. And at the time, it was legal. Currently, it's illegal. They don't make this. They don't offer this one anymore. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't because of the bodybuilding. It was because it was killing a lot of people. And that's what ended up happening with me. I got a version of it that was 20 times stronger than the American version, and it had Thai script. The writing from Thailand was all over the bottle, and there was no English, so I didn't know. Me and my best friend, we didn't. Neither of us could read the Thai script, so we didn't know that it was 20 times stronger than normal. It's a liquid supplement. We each took our little bottle cap. You know, you think a little tiny bottle cap. I've got one here as representation for you. So a little tiny liquid bottle cap like this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all you'd take. Just how much could fit in a little bottle cap? You think that's nothing when it comes to liquid supplements, right?
Right.
So we each took our little liquid shot from the bottle cap, and right away, both my buddy and I could feel some coldness washing over our whole body. It started kind of in the chest area, probably where the heart is,
Mm.
and then started cooling over our whole body. Well, you know, in the past, when we had gotten too much of this or we got too strong of a dose, we would go get something to eat and we would feel better right away. So, you know, we jumped in the car, my buddy's car, went down a few blocks to a Dairy Queen, and we stumbled into the Dairy Queen. I stumbled in first. My buddy stumbled in and collapsed on a booth while I went in the bathroom and I locked the door. Well, the manager of the restaurant, he found my buddy. He called 911. He got him hauled away, and he ended up being fine. He got checked out the following day. He did have to have his stomach pumped, but he was fine. Meanwhile, I went in that locked bathroom and I passed out on the floor on my back and I began to aspirate. I began to vomit my own or breathe my own vomit as it came up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what did me in. That's what actually killed me is I had aspirated. Um, about 45 minutes after, about 40 minutes after, they, uh, the manager of the restaurant called. So about 40 minutes after my buddy was taken away in his ambulance, the manager discovered me when he unlocked the bathroom and saw me on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So they called 911 again for the second time that day. They they attempted some resuscitation. Well, they attempted to touch the body and feel for a pulse, and the gal that was doing that, she felt like the body was cold to the touch. So they waited for an ambulance to arrive just only a few minutes later, and they did pronounce the body as dead on arrival. Almost on the dot, about 45 minutes, maybe closer to 50 minutes after my buddy had been hauled away, they pronounced this body dead on arrival.
Okay.
The
So yeah,
this
a
Yeah,
good
so
amount of time.
a good
Yeah,
amount of time, yeah.
for sure.
And this medical team, it was two veteran medics and one rookie, and they tasked the rookie with babysitting this body that was in the body bag, and they just put it in the back of the ambulance while the other two medics went around and got paperwork filled out as witness statements from other people in the restaurant.
So you're sitting there in the body bag.
Yes, sitting in the
Rookie
body
is
bag.
watching you.
There's no rush. They all believe this body is completely dead. There's no chance of resuscitation. From the time that they did reset, they declared the body dead and put it in the body bag until later they did get a heartbeat started. It was exactly 47 minutes.
So this
And
is then the whole time span is closer to 2 hours now. Is that
closer an hour and a half, 2 hours minimum. Yeah,
okay?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Now,
on paper, declared dead and heart starting again 47 minutes later. Yeah.
got it. Do you have any recollection of any awareness when any of this is going on?
100%. I
Okay.
remember all of it. In fact, I remember it better than I remember stuff that happened before or
Mm.
even since.
What do you
It's
remember?
weird. My entire memory of the whole experience has stayed very vivid. And here I'm coming up, January 21st. It's going to be 22 years since I had my coming alive experience. And I remember everything vividly. There's times I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. And that's quite common for me, because I kind of live in two worlds. I live in the spirit world with my body here, and my spirit goes back and forth all the time. And everyone around me knows when I'm playing up there because they're like, oh, he's not here right now. Don't worry. It's normal for him. Um, but what's neat about it though is I very much was aware of everything through the whole process. I was watching from above my body. I was watching my buddy get hauled away in his ambulance. I saw them call the second ambulance. I saw the medical team declare the body dead, put it in the body bag. They put that body in the back of an ambulance. I watched this rookie medic sitting back there babysitting the body, and I could hear his thoughts as if it was a voice. I could hear everyone's thoughts in the restaurant. Everyone. Even the
You,
cooks in the back, I could hear their thoughts.
do you know do you know in that state, this is my buddy, this is me?
So I
Do you have
didn't
a
know it was
peace about
me.
it all, or do you feel like you're just watching this movie?
Well, me was up here watching everything. So the body that would have been me couldn't be me because me was up here.
Mm.
But I did know it was my buddy who got hauled away in the ambulance, and I was worried about him. As soon as I saw that he was in capable hands, and I heard them say he's stable, like his heart was stable, then I figured he was going to be okay, and he did end up being just fine.
Yeah.
But I was very worried about him because he was my best friend. I didn't want anything bad to happen to him. Yeah.
So then let's talk about you're in the back of the ambulance,
Yes.
and you had mentioned before, I think if I remember correctly, something about a light and you could see it go into the rookie. Is that correct? Did I hear
Yes.
that?
So,
Okay.
pardon me. What I saw was the rookie himself sitting in the back of the ambulance as they pulled away from the scene. They finally got all the paperwork done. Took them about 40 minutes or so. They were pulling away from the scene where they found the body. And as they did, this rookie started to think thoughts like, why didn't I try this? Why didn't I try that? Why didn't I speak up? I know I'm the new guy, but I should have spoke up and got them to do this or do that. He kept thinking about stuff like that. He kept thinking about all the things he could have tried. And after a little while, about a half of a block, he started to glow. He actually started a glow around him, almost like the heart was the center of the glow. And it glowed all the way to about his belly button to his shoulder. It was all glowing, and it was a golden white light. And as it got brighter and brighter and brighter, it felt like it hit this pinnacle, this peak. And as soon as it hit that peak, this very loud energy went over me where I was. And it hit him. I heard it hit him, and it said, "This one's not dead." I know that he heard it, or I know that he received it.
Hmm.
I didn't know how he received it, but I knew he received it. I also heard him say with his own mind, "That's just your imagination. That wasn't real." And then the light, it's almost like the light was like, "Oh, you're going to double down? Okay." And it started getting bigger. And it got all the way to below his waist to above his head. His whole upper body was completely glowing, as if he was light himself.
Yeah.
And then a second wave of energy went over me, and I heard so loud, "This one's not dead." And from that, he took action. He didn't even hesitate. It was the second time that it happened, so he didn't hesitate. He went ahead and opened the body bag. He had to undo straps. He also was breaking protocol, by the way.
Yeah.
And he later almost was fired for doing this, for saving me. But he did break protocol. He opened that body bag. He felt around for a pulse. He finally felt something. It was not a pulse, but it was like a shock, as if you shocked yourself on a door handle or you shocked yourself on an electrical outlet. It was a very electrical shock that he felt. And it was when he was feeling for my femoral artery, which is a big artery on your leg. But when he felt that shock, he kind of jumped, and that was enough. He jumped into action. He started trying to resuscitate the body. He was forcing oxygen into the lungs. He then hooked up a defib machine, and as he hooked up the defib, the other two medics started to ridicule him, tell him he was going to get fired. They were telling him that they were going to stop this ambulance right now and stop him from doing this. And it didn't dissuade him at all. He shocked the first time. He did happen to get no heartbeat. On the second round of shocks, he got a single heartbeat. And that single heartbeat, it completely shut down the two veteran medics. They stopped talking everything that they were doing, and they just listened. Everyone was listening for that third round. And when the third round of shocks came, the heart came back, and it was like a steady boom. It was like boom, 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 boom. It was weak, but it was steady. Mm-hmm. And the miracle of all this to me is not just that this amazing medic listened, but that he listened at the right time and the right place. Because when the heart was started, it was no less than maybe 100 or so feet to a hospital right there. Yeah. So they were able to take the very first right turn they could as soon as my heart started and go directly into a hospital. Yeah. And of course, the veteran medics, they radioed ahead. So they even had two personnel waiting at the door, waiting to receive this guy, waiting to receive the body.
I've heard your story, but I got a little teary-eyed a little bit ago, because to me it just speaks of that there is just so much more that we don't even know about, and just the connection that we have inwardly and with the God realm. And it's just a beautiful story of how it all came together, like you said, at the right time. And
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then they take you to the hospital.
Yes, they took the body, turned it into the hospital. The hospital started working on it, and the body itself started to go into some major convulsions and seizures. Mm-hmm. And as it was doing that, they had to strap it down. They actually had to physically strap the legs and the arms of the body, because it was just flailing around and kicking and vomiting. That was not pretty at all. It looked horrible. But as they strapped the body down, I felt someone strapping me down where I was sitting. And I felt like I was sitting exactly like this in a comfortable chair. And I remember looking straight down, watching all this happen. And out of nowhere, I feel like someone is strapping my left arm down. And I look like this to see what's going on with my left arm. And I look down to see the left arm of the body, as if the left arm of the body was now up here with me, observing above. And that's when I had this very scary moment of, how could I be so dumb? This is actually me. Of course it's me. It was with my buddy. How did I not put that together? Why did I think I was up here and that was down there, something separate? That was down there was actually me. And so I had this overwhelming ignorance come, like a self-decided, self-judgment ignorance put on me, that how could I be so dumb to not know everything I'd been watching was me? And it's hard for me to explain other than this. It would be as if you're driving down the street and you pull up to a stoplight, and you look 3 lanes over and someone is driving your car and they look just like you. But you know that's not you because you're in this car. You're over here. That's what it felt like. It
So
felt like it couldn't have been me, you know?
Have you now made sense of that as to what was happening?
Yes, absolutely. So the soul has a very unique relationship with the body. and the soul can be away from the body but still attached.
Mhm.
And that's what I was experiencing. It's kind of like the soul is the balloon and the body is the string, or maybe the rock at the end of the string.
Mhm.
And I just allowed my string to stretch out and be where I thought it needed to be, I guess. But for sure, I knew for a fact that what I'd been watching was my own death, and it was very scary for me. I felt
Yeah.
horrible. I started to see every bad thing that I ever did in my life. And it only took a few minutes, but it also felt like it took 100 years.
Mhm.
I saw every little thing that I ever did, even the things when I was a small child, little
How,
dishonesties to big dishonesties. I saw them all.
how did
And
that come up for you?
it came up, I feel like all of us lie to ourselves a little bit. And we think, oh, well, maybe that didn't happen exactly how we remember it. Maybe we weren't as bad as we thought. But I felt like a very bad person. I did. There was a lot of bad things I did, um, and I felt horrible about it.
So are you seeing all of these things like images that are flashing before you, or are you
I'm
feeling
actually
them?
I'm actually seeing it from the eyes of who I was doing it to, and that's what there was many times, even as a small child, when I was hurting my brother and I didn't know I was hurting my brother,
Yeah.
and I saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
And that one was really hard for me. I finally got to the end of it. I went from my earliest age up to, I mean, even 2, 3 years old, I was remembering things all the way to my that current age back then at 25 years old. And I thought, why do I exist? If this is all that I am, why do I even exist? And as soon as I had that thought, this overwhelming warmth came over me from behind. And now I was flashing, boom, 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 every good thing that I ever did. And comparatively, for every one bad thing, there was 3, 4, even 5 times as many good things that I did.
Yeah.
And many times when I didn't know I was doing good, I was doing good. And the same thing, I didn't just see it from my perspective, I saw it from the perspective of those who I was doing good things to and for. And after a short little period that felt like forever, I felt that I was worth existing. I was worth saving. I was worth fighting for. That I wasn't all bad, that I did do a lot of good, and my good far exceeded my bad. And
That
I
certainly
kept,
makes you want to be a better person.
it does,
Me
absolutely.
listening, I'm like, yeah, thinking the same thing.
And then I felt this warmth pouring over me. And in my mind's eye, it felt like that light that was overcoming the medic. That's what it felt like, that was starting to overcome me. And I turned around because I knew it was coming from behind me. So I turned around and bam, I see this man all dressed in white. He's smiling at me. He's grinning from ear to ear. He's so excited. I can somehow know he's excited to see me. And I hear him think, um, I love you. And my only response is, oh, you're God. You're God. And his response, instantaneous, was, no, son, I'm not God. I'm your guide. I'm here to help you go wherever you want to go. And he explained that he could take me back to my body, or he could take me into my future. And I, of course, did not want to go back to the body. It looked like hell. I mean, literally, it looked like hell. What the body was going through at that very moment. It was being straddled by this nurse. They were injecting things into the chest. They were doing all sorts of stuff to the body. It looked horrible. I knew I didn't want that. So I asked him, I said, hey, I noticed this tremendous love coming off of you. Can I go where that comes from? And he got very excited. He's like, that's from your home. I'll take you to your home. He says, that's my home too. So he was really excited. He wanted to take me to his home, which was also my home. And we began this journey, this proverbial journey where we went from the earthly realm up to the heavenly realm. But it's like we had to climb some frequency stairs. And even though it felt like we weren't leaving Earth, it felt like we were leaving Earth in frequency. Like we were going to all these alternate frequencies in a higher place. The first thing that I had to learn was how to be authentic. I thought for sure the first thing would be love.
Yeah.
And my guide, he called himself Drake. He says, yeah, everybody thinks it's just about love, but until you're authentic, you can't send or receive love. Like love is no good for you, and it's no good for anyone else if you can't be authentic about it. So authenticity was the most important thing I needed to learn. Second most was to know why I was on Earth. I needed to know that Earth is a school. It's not a courtroom, it's a classroom. And it's a place for me to grow and learn and create relationships and create all sorts of things. But life here is about creating, not about consuming, about creating. And once I could get a gist of authenticity, life as a classroom, then he showed me it was about love and loving everyone, but learning to truly love everyone, even who we perceive as our enemies. We need to learn how to love them, because sometimes our enemies run us into the right places in life. And sometimes our enemies are the very learning that we needed to shape us into who we are. And so I needed to learn to love everyone and understand that we are all one in that love, if I can allow it in me. And then Drake taught me that all of us, when we embody that love that God has for us, we get access to God. And in that access, we get a connection with God through a voice. And that voice, people call it their intuition, they call it the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost. It's God communicating to you through love. That's what this is. And that we all have access. There is no one ever that has not had that access. But he did show me that in growing and learning from this, that we have to learn to use technology responsibly, because technology will try to replace that voice. It will try to and it will succeed. It has succeeded. I mean, you look at
That voice for sure, right?
yeah, 3 generations back, when our great great grandparents had a very big question, they would pray, ask God, and get their answer. Now, you have a big question, you go directly to Google. And so it's like we've replaced God with technology. We have. Now, I'm not downplaying Google. Google's very important for a lot of people, but it's not the only source. There is the true source, the source that supersedes Google and supersedes all technology. And that's the source of intuition, of divine knowledge. And when we learn to use technology responsibly, we can learn to utilize that source. Yeah, but Drake, he kept taking me on this journey, and I was a little bit of a know-it-all back then. Some people might argue I still am a little bit, but I felt that I already had everything I needed. Why are we learning about this? I'm like, I already know what I need to know to get to heaven. You can just let me in. And Drake kept laughing. He was lovingly laughing with me, not at me. And he kept telling me, he's like, Vinney, I love that you think you have everything you need, but let's look at one more thing. And then we'd get through that thing, and he'd say, Vinney, let's look at one more thing. And he kept doing that. The next one that he went over with me was releasing all prejudice. And I said, oh, you don't even need to bring this one up. I'm already not prejudiced. And that's when he asked me, well, how do you feel about prejudiced people then?
Mm-hmm.
And I went off. I was like, I'm going to tell you about prejudiced people. They're bad. They're ignorant. They're closed-minded. They're insecure. They are looking to project their insecurities on others, and they call that their prejudice. And as soon as I said that, Drake like just smiled, lovingly smiled, and he showed me almost like in a cartoon in my mind. He showed me this little cartoon of Vinney, and I put myself on the non-prejudice side of life. And as I was like yammering on about prejudiced people, he lifted me up in full conversation. He lifts me up and he puts me on the prejudice side. And he let me see that by me being prejudiced, even against that kind of person, I myself am joining the prejudice side of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Different concept. Yeah.
Yeah, and think about that. That means that we can never be pro something by being anti something. It's one or
Exactly.
the other. It's one or the other.
It's like while we're here on Earth, like there's always these two opposing forces, really in anything, and it's learning to get to that oneness. And I don't know exactly how we do it or how we practice, or maybe we don't do it while we're here in this classroom completely. But yeah, I think always these two forces are what, like you said, if you're pro something, then you're against something else, and it speaks to itself there.
Well, as soon as I had accepted that, yes, I had been prejudiced against prejudiced people, I learned to love even the prejudice and love that there is this principle that hurt people hurt people.
Mhm.
That it's not someone who hasn't been hurt that goes out and decides they're going to hate something or someone. They do it because that's their response to how they dealt with their own traumas. And that if you can capture someone before they've started to be that hating person, and you help rectify or bring solace or solution to where they were already damaged, you can prevent them from becoming prejudiced themselves.
That's
And
so
that
good.
love really is the answer. Love is the true solution that
Mm.
supersedes all time and place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's seeing people with a different perspective. And yeah, that's so good.
But then the next thing Drake taught me is that all of us have a tremendous power of creating, and that our power, our magic wands, are our thoughts, that we create with our thoughts. Our thoughts become our words become our actions become our habits. And before you know it, what was just a thought is now steering us in our life, and it's steering us where we're going to go. So if we can control our thoughts, we can control our destiny. But it starts first with our thoughts. And that the power of creation is first with thought. It's as if, let's say I want to build a building. I go buy property. I go meet with an architect and an engineer, and we draw up a building. And then we build the building. We hire contractors, we get materials, we build it. Well, it actually started first with the thought. And if you can correct there, it's far easier than to correct after the building is already built. But we do have power, tremendous power in creation with just our thoughts alone.
Can I stop you and ask, how do you practice or how do you teach people to change? Let's say that building's already been built. How do you teach people to change their thoughts and to really gravitate to a new thought that they believe is true and it can, bring forth new
Well,
things?
actually, that was the next thing that he taught me, was something that will help you control your thoughts, and that's avoiding negative influences and seeking out positive influences. So if you know your thoughts are the power of creation, and maybe you have a hard time thinking positively, then go seek out positive influences. Go seek out positive thought influences, positive entertainment, positive friends, positive places to be, positive ways of being. And when you seek those things out, you're now shifting that power of creation towards the positive. And that's what it is.
That's
He phrased it as avoid negative influences, but wrapped in that was and seek out positive influences. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
But
That
that's
makes
the most important part of this process of creation is if we are surrounded by negative energies, we will eventually create negative things. If we surround ourselves with positive energies, or better yet, even if we're in a negative environment, but we hold on to positive energy or positive thoughts, positive ideas, eventually, if we act upon those positive energies, they will lead us out of the negative environments.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I speak from that personally. I went through this uh, 2-year journey with my sister, and during that time, I didn't want to take in anything negative. And at the end of this journey, it changed me, and I see that the things that we take in,
Mm-hmm.
that's what eventually comes out of us. So if it's the music that you're listening to, it's what you're watching, who you're surrounding yourself around, what you're reading, what you're taking in, that's what eventually comes out of you. So it is very important. And I'm a mom of 4 kids, and I think it's so much more important nowadays to really impart that on our younger generation, because they're getting so much influence and so much noise from everything else. So I do my best, but I think all of us we're all in it together.
Yeah, we are. And,
Mhm.
you know, it's important for us to understand that there is purpose even in the darkness.
Yeah.
There's purpose in evil. There's purpose in um, evil people, evil behaviors. The whole reason we came here is to learn the power of creation, to learn the power of making choices. But if all there was good choices, there'd be no learning. So with the purpose of coming here to choose, there has to be the bad choices, just as important as there it is to have the good choices. And with choosing bad regularly, you're going to discover evil. You're going to discover the energy of evil, and it serves the purpose of this. It forces you to choose a team. It forces you to choose darkness or light, evil, fear, languishing, or love, divinity, divine influence and congregation. That we can seek so many things out of the light. And I'll tell you some of my darkest periods, which, after this happened, I'll tell you in a minute. I was in one of my darkest periods. It sure helps me appreciate the light.
Mhm.
It does. So understanding there's purpose even in evil, that if God came and saved us every time a human life or a soul was in danger, there would be no learning. And the danger comes with the opportunity to learn. Take away the danger, there's no learning.
Mhm. One of my favorite scriptures is that God is in all, through all, and above all, and it
Yes.
is in all. So and that is what propels us. Oftentimes, is those negative circumstances or situations. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's important that we seek out, um, seek to choose the light, seek to choose love, seek to choose the positive things, and then we'll be reaping the rewards, the benefits of having those positive influences, those positive energies in us, in our lives, in our world. It's also very important to know that we are all one. We're all part of God, every single one of us. And that includes every religion. That means from the best of us to the worst of us. We are all part of God. And if God created Jacob's ladder, which is this process of us descending to earth to learn and climbing back up to go to our source, our home, our heaven, then God created the top of the ladder just as much as God created the bottom of the ladder. And that there is divine pattern, divine purpose in all of it. and to understand that when I go out in my daily world, my daily life, and I see behaviors I don't agree with, I don't like, I can look at them with grace and say, look at me there. Look at me doing that there. I'm so glad I'm not doing that here. I want to give love, healing, and grace to that person. I hope that they're able to release whatever they're trying to figure out with this.
And when you're saying look at me there, you're saying that from the place of oneness.
Yes, because
Yeah.
we are all one. We are.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we're one consciousness, but the closer you get to God, the more unified we are.
Do you ever have um moments where it's hard to love still? Or are you
Absolutely,
okay?
absolutely. Yeah, I'm still, a soul having this human experience, and sometimes it's a very human experience.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I just got through a really bad illness for the last about week, and in the process of that happening, I realized how strong it was to make a choice to be good, to make a choice to be nice. Even as you're feeling your body tearing itself apart, you still have that opportunity to make a choice to be kind and to be nice. Because if I allowed my illness to be the focal and the universe of who I am, I wouldn't have even had the thought to be nice to anyone or anything. And I
Yeah.
would have missed some really neat opportunities to show grace, to show gratitude, to show love, even when I was feeling in the pits of despair. But that led me to the end of kind of our stepping through these different frequencies. And by then, I was actually in this heavenly space. There was quite a progress even going through those last few steps, but by the end, I was actually in a heavenly realm. My feet were touching the ground on some grass. I felt like I was now finally plugged into something I was built to be plugged into.
Mm.
And I felt so much unconditional love. From every single blade of grass, I felt a whole world full of unconditional love being poured upon me. And I could feel the healing power of God there. I could feel that God was in everything there. And that in that heavenly realm, there's not an outside sun shining light on everything. Everything there is the sun. Like every object, everything, every being was emitting tremendous amounts of light. I feel like even a single blade of grass had more energy in it than our entire sun does. It's at such a different level of consciousness or even comprehension that to remember back to earth is to almost like have a bad memory. And earth is awesome. It
Mm.
really is. But once you're there, you realize that earth is kind of the knockoff, the cheap copy. And it has to be, because if it's anything like heaven, we would never want to leave that place. And earth needs to be kind of hard so that we want to go back home when it comes time. So I started to discover this heavenly realm. First, I discovered the grass. If I could get your audience to even understand for a second what that grass is like, after you would have that experience, your entire life would change.
Mm-hmm.
It's so full of unconditional love, love that you could never earn, love you could never do anything right to receive. You could save whole worlds full of beings, and it's still not enough to earn the amount of love you get from this grass.
It's amazing.
The grass itself has music coming off of it, has waves of iridescent lights oscillating and vibrating off of it. It has consciousness. Every blade has consciousness. And it had sweetness. Even to touch it with my feet, I could actually taste this tremendous, sweet, loving feeling coming from this grass. And then Drake came over to me and he said, Vinney, if you like the grass, you should see the flowers. And I freaked out. I geeked out, freaked out, however you want to say it. And I was like, my soul was screaming, like, there's flowers? What? How could they get any better? And then flowers was even better. And then he showed me trees, and that was even better than the flowers. Because trees, you found the strength of unity in these forests, holding to each other and standing for each other. And then the next thing I know, I feel this like little touch to my toe, and I look down and I see that water had come up out of this little stream and had come over to me. And it was asking me, do you want us on you? And I said, yes, definitely. And so the water came up over my feet and encapsulated me. And as it came and encapsulated the top of my head and the tips of my fingers, it had completely encapsulated me. It started to do this healing, kind of a patchwork. It started to patch all this damage that had been put in me in this life. And I had quite a bit. Um, Again, it was pouring so much love. I didn't feel that anyone could deserve this. And I just accepted it. I embraced it. I loved it. And finally, when it was done, it didn't take long. The water said it was done, and it just started to recede off of me. And I noticed that I went to feel myself, and I was dry still. So it wasn't like water here on earth. It was like a liquid electricity. That's what it felt like. And it massively healed my soul in ways I didn't know I even needed. And that's when I noticed a building. And I started getting very excited about that. And Drake could see that I was getting a little too excited about that. I almost as if he knew I was going to start running to go and see this building. And so I only got to look at the building for just a few minutes. And then he came around and stood in front of me. He put one arm on me and he said, Vinney, this is going to be really hard, but it's going to be worth it. And he pulled me in for a hug. And in this hug, it felt like the collision of like 7 universes. It was this tremendous energy of the two of us hugging. And I could feel this just almost like a boom, like an explosion of light coming off of the two of us. I could even feel the velocity of this energy just rippling through the universe, going away from us. Mm. And I knew that what I was being taught through this moment is when two of us can come together in God's love of us, that we become like 4 or 5 or maybe even 8 times stronger than we could be, just the two of us. And as that was all happening, I then started to hear a prayer being said over my body. Now, meanwhile, my body had been brain dead for 3 days.
Right.
It was now the evening of January the 20th. So almost 3 days later, my brother started saying a prayer over my body. He commanded me to be made whole. He commanded my soul to come back into my body. Exactly in those words, he said, he said, I command your spirit to come back to your body. I command it now. And then he completed the prayer. And to me, it felt instantaneous. When my brother said amen to that prayer, when he completed it, I felt as if I woke up seconds later. It was a few hours later, but I woke up at 1:11 in the morning on January 21st, 2003. I woke up to screaming nurses freaking out that I was awake. I woke up to myself feeling extremely claustrophobic. I didn't want to be alive. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go home. I didn't quite know what home was yet. Yeah. And later that morning, when I did get to go home, I still felt I wanted to go home. I didn't understand it. I felt like I wanted to pack my bags and go home. but I didn't know where I would be going.
So that was the part where Drake was telling you this is going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. The hard part was
I wish that
you were
was the
in your
hard
home.
part. That was actually not so bad. The hard part was so right away for the first almost 24 hours, I didn't remember any of my experience. It's like it's like heaven knew not to let me come right back with the memories, because if I had, I probably would have grabbed something sharp and ended my life right then. I would have. Um, it was it was a little over 24 hours. Is about, let's see, about 30 some odd hours after I woke up is when my sister, she had invited me out to dinner with her kids and with another sister of mine, and she cornered me in the restaurant, and she's very much into uh, the paranormal and metaphysical type stuff. She always has been. And she cornered me and she said, Todd, which is my middle name. She always called me by my middle name. She said, Todd, you were dead. Everyone said you were dead. Did you see anything? And I went to say no. I was going to answer like a brother would. I was going to say, no, idiot, shut up, go back and eat dinner or something like that. But I didn't. I said, I started to speak. I started to weep. I started to cry. And what I got out of my mouth was, I saw a man. He was my guide. I called him Drake, and he showed me heaven. And then I just started to weep. I couldn't get any more of it out. I couldn't get any of it out.
Was that the
I,
first time you remembered that you
it
had the
was the first
experience?
time. It
Okay.
was the first time. My brain was trying to say no, but my soul allowed the truth to come out of me. It felt as if something had come over me and allowed me to speak the truth of my memory. And it's as if I was saying it and receiving it at the same moment.
Right.
Now, that's where I went into my dark period.
Okay.
Now I knew why I wasn't home. Now I knew why I didn't feel home anywhere, anywhere. So I started cleaning up my life. Um, I cleaned up everything in my life. I cleaned up negative people out of my life. I cleaned up the places I was going, the people I was with. I started really being conscious about putting myself in good places or just being at home. And in that process, I reached out to one of my old friends that I knew she was a good friend. I asked her if there was any time we could go hang out. She was always asking me, and I could never go. And it was funny. She goes, "It's odd you're asking me because tonight we're going bowling." And I said, "Fine." Bowling wasn't my thing. It's kind of become my thing as a fun hobby, but um, so I went bowling with her and her friends. But I went to go meet them at their house before we went bowling, and I met this amazing young woman. We had a truly magical moment when we met each other. And now I could hear Drake saying out loud, "It will be worth it." And I kept hearing him say that. And she got me through some tremendously hard times. And it was her influence over me that had me spending a lot more time with my family, because I was such a career minded individual before. I was never with my family for anything. And now, with her influence, I was with my family as much as possible, unless I was working. And as we were building this relationship to each other, we knew we were going to marry each other before we had been on one date. And actually, we kissed for the first time before we'd even been on one date. We both knew
Yeah.
that God was putting us together, and we both joke around that we're one of the few individuals born in the United States that live in an arranged marriage, because God did arrange our marriage. We both will give 100% credit to God for that. Now, she influenced me to go to a family reunion in this little town of Wyoming, and I'm sitting down at this presentation at a high school about the history of this little town called Afton. And I'm watching the history. They're telling about the founders of the town, some of the first clergy of the town, the surveyors who helped divide up the town. And up comes this picture of Drake. But what floored me is it didn't say his name was Drake. It said his name was Charles. But I recognized the last name as my grandmother's maiden name. So we went straight there. We went straight to my grandmother's house. I didn't even finish watching the presentation. Sorry, guys, but I was in such a state. I couldn't. I was weeping. I was crying. I was frozen. I was shaking. This is in like the third week of July, and I was shaking like a wet cat. And we go directly to my grandmother's house. I walk in the door and I go, Grandma, 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 tell me about Charles Kazare. And she goes, Oh, you mean great grandpa Drake? I can tell you about him. He's kind of famous in our family. And at that moment, I now finally realized that this was not some hypothetical delusion. This was not an illusion or a dream. This was something very real. And then I needed to treat it with sacredness and preciousness. And so I did. For many years since, I still work with Drake. Almost daily, I still work with Drake. He is still one of my guides. I work under, what religion calls the Holy Ghost or Holy Spirit. It's the love that God has for us. And I work in that love to help people. And that's what I do for a living. I've been doing it for years now, where I help people find solutions where they have none, or help them get to the next level when they've been struggling for a long time. Majority of my clients have never had life coaches. I would say 95% of them never had a life coach, but I've had many of them for years. So it's part of my divine purpose, not just to share my story, but to share who I am because of my story. And it took me a long time to be okay with it. I was always afraid that I was going to disappoint God or disappoint my loved ones, my ancestors. So I wanted to make sure I was honoring them in each step along the way.
Right.
And that's what I do daily. I strive to honor that love energy, that love healing that I received in heaven with the things that I do every day.
Well, I mean, I'm on the other side of the screen with you, and I can certainly feel it, and I can feel your genuineness. And so um, I'm sure that whoever is brought to you, you are making such a big difference in their lives, and it's that domino ripple effect, what
Mm-hmm.
they go on to do from there. And um, I have a few questions for you that, I kind of jotted a couple things down. When your brother was saying that prayer, what is your take on prayer? Because, there's people out here listening that say, gosh, I prayed and that didn't happen. And what do you, knowing what you know now, know of prayer as we know it here?
Prayer is asking heaven to get involved in your life. If you don't do it, doesn't mean they won't get involved,
Mhm.
but it does prevent them from putting all the resources that they could into your life. So prayer is very powerful. I have a very good friend, his daughter, who is a friend of my daughter's too, get in a very bad accident. Um, she essentially was dead. She was at the worst level of traumatic brain injury. And within hours of her accident, we had thousands and thousands, maybe even tens and tens of thousands of prayers going out for her. I know for a fact prayers have power.
Okay.
They are very powerful. So use them. But here's the thing, you don't pray with the expectation that you get what you want. Pray and accept the help that arrives, even if it's not the help you wanted.
I like that.
The help will be there in some
Mm-hmm.
form or another. Help and assistance will be there, even if it is assistance to endure the trial of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is another question, and I don't know if you've been asked anything like this before, but I found myself, I had mentioned that I walked through that cancer journey with my sister, and it sent me down this rabbit hole in terms of doing all the research, like supplements. And now we hear about electromagnetic fields or conventional versus unconventional medicine. And I think it can be very overwhelming and very paralyzing, for people to know what to do. But deep down in me, I believe that there is something, I think, greater within all of us, and something that, I mean, you had this healing that took place in your own body that didn't involve needing, I mean, I guess at one point you did need your heart to restart, but where I'm getting at with this is, do you feel like that we're meant to get so caught up in all of these details of what's going to heal us? Or do you think that there's maybe this deeper piece or truth that we're missing?
Let me put it in a way that will be easy for your audience to understand. When the artist walks up to the canvas and he looks down to his palette, his or her palette, he doesn't look at all those colors and think, oh no, why are there so many? He looks at that palette and thinks, wow, look at what I can create with this. And he starts putting color or paint onto canvas. There is going to be a lot of solutions, a lot of confusion in this world. But what drives the painter to create beautiful artwork is inspiration and passion. So, key for all of us on our own journey is find what inspires you, find what builds passion in you, and utilize those two forces, because there you have a crosshair to invite heaven into your life.
I like that too. I
And
know
heaven, and
your story.
I was
Go
just going to
ahead.
say real quick, and heaven will guide you to not have so much confusion in so many things. Yeah.
I know your story goes on from here as well. And you had mentioned before you still interact with Drake. I think you said at the beginning you still are able to visit that realm. Did I
Yes.
understand that correctly?
Yeah.
So you've been left with some gifts after
Hmm.
having this experience. Can you explain a little bit about this
So
gift?
all the gifts I have are the same that all of us have. We
Yeah.
all have these gifts. There's not one thing I have that not everyone out there already has. What happened though is I got touched with the love from heaven, and it helped me realize those gifts. When you can pour enough love on you, it helps wash away a lot of your false ideas and false paradigms and false um, precepts. It allows you to see your truths
Mhm.
and see what you really have. Now, it did take me a few years to get comfortable using those gifts.
Yeah.
There's many, I mean, thousands and thousands of opportunities to follow my intuitive gifts. And if I did, there was blessings on the other side. And many times it had nothing to do with me. It was always someone else, but it still was a blessing, because me being part of that process, I was walking away with so much love
Mm-hmm.
from heaven. So, it's more about allowing ourselves to be washed with enough love once in a while to perceive the gifts that we already have,
Mm-hmm.
and then tune them up, turn them on, and then turn them up.
Keep
Yeah.
turning them up.
Yeah.
I heard you say, and this really resonated with me. You said something to the effect of, um, ask yourself what made you happy before. Is it making you happy now? And and I might be not saying that correctly, but what I got out of that is, um, kind of the same old that we're doing. Every year sort of feels like it's on repeat. You do this activity, and don't get me wrong, I love my family, I love my friends, I love the moments and that we make together. But there's a hunger in me, and I wonder if you know that this is going to be coming into fruition for many of us, that says this is kind of boring. Like, there's so much more. There's so
Yeah.
much more that is within each of us, and I want to tap into that. I don't know exactly how, other than to keep my heart open. Um, but I just wondered, when you made that statement or something to the liking of that, is that what you meant?
It somewhat is. Too many of us, we see happiness, we see contentment as something over there, something that we have to go get. It's not something we already own. But if we can't own the happiness that we already have, we will never get the happiness we are seeking. So, what we have to do is we have to figure out how to make now our happiness, how to make now what is our peace, our our pleasant presence experience. We need to figure out how to take now and expand now what it is and how grateful we are for it. And once we're there, then we can start finding meaning, deeper meaning. So it's like, instead of trying to find meaning, make now meaningful. And then you will start finding meaning everywhere you go. Does that
Are
make
there,
sense?
it does. Are there ways that you can teach just the average person how, like, what's one thing that they can do
So
to
one
start doing that?
one thing I am a huge believer in is allowing yourself to know that you have access to heaven through your breath.
Hmm.
Through your breath. One of the names for God is Yahweh. And to some, the Yah represents the inhale, the way represents the exhale. So that we are saying God's name with every breath, with every inhale and exhale. That means the first thing we do when we're born is we say God's name. And the last thing we do before we die and go to see God will be say God's name.
Hmm.
And that God is, and when you follow that term, Yahweh, it actually, the long version, the original version, means the one who we can't name. Because you can't name breath. It's something not seen, but it is within us. It gives us our power. And that's what God is. God is a force, an energy. You don't have to believe in God. God's going to believe in you. But allow that force, that energy of your breath to be a power, because it is a power. I would say 99% of the world is shallow breathers.
Mhm.
Their inhales and exhales are so close to each other, it would look like uh, a field of grass, just boom, 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 boom. Inhale, exhale, right? Now, if you start lengthening your grass, start lengthening your inhales, go to 4 seconds in. So hold, exhale. And if you really want to have fun, exhale for half the time you're inhaling. So inhale for 4, exhale for 2, inhale for 4, exhale for 2. And if you can do a 4 second hold or 2 second hold in there, awesome.
In between.
But when you can do that, you're inviting a higher level of energy into the physiology, and it's putting the physiology in a peak performance state. And in a peak performance state, you just are happier. You just are. And if you're happier, now you're more joyful. And if you're more joyful, you're attracting and bringing forward more joyful experiences, more joyful people, and a happier circumstances for yourself. So simply controlling your breath and inviting more breath into your body, you're inviting more life, more God, more force into you. And it just starts with something so simple as your breath, but it is so powerful. I was doing it not just 30 minutes before this today. I was helping a gal realize that she had a happiness in her she never knew she had. And she's been on this journey for 57 years, 58 years. And she didn't know she had access to that joy from just breath.
Yeah. You have so much to teach. What would you say to people listening? One, what should we as a society be focusing on most? And maybe even where do we have it wrong right now?
Um, Imagine if you could wake up tomorrow and have only two things in your life, what would they be or who would they be?
Mm-hmm.
And start protecting those two things. Start cherishing those two things. Start serving and loving those two things. Stop letting the world complicate things so much. Life is not about investments. Life is not about estates. Life is not about incomes. I've never met a soul on the other side who said, I wish I would have worked one more week. I wish I would have put in 2 more hours a day. I never heard that, not once. But what I have heard, I wish I wouldn't have worked so much. I heard just today from a healer who was healing for like 17 to 18 hours every day. She wished so bad she had taken 2 to 3 hours every day and focused it on home.
Yeah. I mean, that's so good. And that's such a good, profound way to put it. I want to respect your time, but I do have one other final question for you, and I think it
Sure.
could help bring some comfort to people. So for those listening that have lost somebody, is there anything that you can speak to them and give them some sort of comfort?
Well, first things first, you didn't lose them.
Mm.
You can't lose what you love. You can't. So keep loving them and you will never lose them. They're a part of you. They're a part of your breath. They're a part of your existence. And the soul only has room for one master. And when we're grieving and we're suffering, we have no room for inspiration. So allow yourself to flow through the grieving, to love yourself through the suffering. And I've even in my own time, when I lost my mom, I thanked my creator. I thanked my creator for not wanting to breathe because didn't have my mom here. Because to me that meant she was a good mom. That the vacuum of her being here left me with so much emptiness. And I glorified the emptiness that I suffered in because it was a footprint of a very, very great woman. And I thank God every day that she's my mom. And once I got through the suffering, the grieving, which is never ending, by the way, you go through phases, you go through periods where you've got to grieve, you've got to release and allow. But once you've gotten through those periods of that, I started realizing I can connect to mom. But I'm connecting to a different version of her than the version I had. I'm connecting to her eternal version, which is a lot more full of spunkness and youth energy, but still that divine light that my mom is.
Yeah.
And so I'm discovering a new version of my mom in the work that I do since. And she is one of my guides, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't ever be able to embrace her as a helper if I couldn't get through the grief and the suffering. It's healthy to grieve and it's healthy to suffer because that means that that person was great for us and important for us, and we can be grateful that we grieve because of that.
Oh, I like that a lot. You had also mentioned something. I said that was going to be my last question, but there's in the Bible, Jesus says, "Greater works will we do than He did." And I know that your story goes on, and time doesn't allow us to get into all of that. But I know you know some of what might be coming. Do you foresee that that time is coming where we collectively can do some of these great works and that the power is within us because we are all connected to that oneness?
It's here right now.
Yeah.
It's here
Yeah.
right
But
now.
more in the masses. I
I
don't,
watched it. I watched it with my buddy's daughter, who got in that really bad accident.
yeah.
I'm here in the city that she's in right now in her recovery, and I went to go see her yesterday, and she's walking around on her own with a tremendous traumatic brain injury, only weeks after she was essentially dead.
Mm.
To me, that's the power, that's the miracles. Every one of those prayers that were given to her, they were given in the Christ energy. And that's how we will see tremendous miracles being done on this earth, is because now there's not just one Christ. Christ can be in all of us at the same time. Can you imagine how we could change this world if we could even get 10% of us to embody the Christ? No matter what our religion is,
Yeah.
but embody that Christ, that anointing, that grace. That is powerful. And the world will be changing because of that, and is changing because of it.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
I feel it. Well, maybe the two of you will join forces because you're two walking miracles who
Oh,
obviously
I
will
think so. I
bring.
joked with her about it yesterday that we're going to have to get her a book and get something going so she can be a hope and an inspiration for others who are going through what she's gone through. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, where can people find you and learn more about you? And
So everything I do through my nonprofit at livinggodslight.org. So livinggodslight.org. They can subscribe to our email list to get updates on events. We have regular events. We're setting up a community where people can use the workbook that we are just coming out with right now. This workbook is something that helps you through the 10 principles I learned about. It helps you embody a more spiritually inclined, purposeful led day. It helps you bring heaven into your world and you into heaven. And it just helps you more of a cohesive experience of life that way. So, yeah, and we're building a community through our nonprofit so that people can find each other in their local communities, work through the workbook together at the same time as have social groups, social gatherings, do meditations together, prayers together, fasting experiences with each other, so that you can start finding your own tribe in your local area and know that you're not alone. There are so many people on this sojourn right now. There is a tremendous amount of people on this sojourn of the soul right now. And it's important that we find each other.
yeah, like you said earlier, it's, imagine this feeling with one person, but imagining it being with, two, three, four, and how much
Oh,
more
yeah.
power that there is
So
behind
much
that.
more power. Yep. Absolutely.
Oh, thank you again for being here today. Thank you for your willingness to share your incredible story on my platform. And I really appreciate all that you have taught today and continue to teach. And I, for one, will sure be following you.
Yeah. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you
Yeah.
for all that you do. And know that whether a little voice or a large voice, it doesn't matter, because it's the little voices that save us from the large moments. So thanks for being uh, the voice, whether it be little or large.
Oh,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia.
And thank you, everyone. If you liked what you hear, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and follow. Have a great day.